Views and opinions expressed in this webinar are of the resource speaker alone and does not reflect official policy of this office or of the Bureau. We are open to contrary views and opinions. Just reach us out or post them in the comment section.
Good morning everyone. Good morning to our mga kapihan onliners. Our top fan. Good morning, my Buntag Central Visayas. Welcome to our 41st episode. This is the third and the last part of the webinar of the legal precedents, points of navigation, and of course, with our resource speaker, no less than the ever-gorgeous former city treasurer of Dumaguete City, Mrs. Ofelia Oliva. Okay? So in the midst of uncertainties amidst COVID-19, having clarity of our purpose, our values will help and guide the Treasury and Assessment Services, our value creation, and our relevance. At the same time, let us continue to innovate and try out new things faster than at any time before. Therefore, we are encouraging everyone to stay focused on our discussion because I'm pretty sure you will learn a lot and apply in your respective LGUs. So, again, in behalf of the BLGF Online Kapihan production team, I am asking everyone to please don't forget to like, to share, and to subscribe our YouTube channel so that you will be notified for any updates. So, thank you and good morning everyone.
Okay, now, what is the first law or section in this book on local taxation? Section 128. The provisions herein shall govern the exercise by provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays of their taxing and other revenue-raising powers. These LGUs mention provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays. These are the political subdivisions of the government. We have the national government, we have also the instrumentalities and agencies, and then we have also the GOCCs. Now, let's go first to unahin ko muna yung NPC. NPC, yeah. Okay. Kung bakit NPC ang lumabas, and then NGCP ang nagreklamo. Okay, I'll tell you. Ito ang mga projects ng NPC. Parang sila ang responsible for that generation, transmission, supply, and distribution of electric power. Do you get me? When it comes to generation and transmission, dati, it is the National Power Corporation. That's why there was a joke before. Pag mag-brown out tayo, pag mag-blackout tayo, ay nako, NPC, National Power Corporation. No? So, ganon. So, it was created under Commonwealth Act number 120 on November 3, 1936. As a non-stock government corporation, meaning non-stock, walang stocks, financed wholly by the national government. So, in 1960, NPC was converted. Kay non-stock man siya, gi-invert into a stock corporation under Republic Act 2641. In 1971, its charter was revised by virtue of Republic Act 6395 as amended. Ito na ang last niya. So, may charter na ang NPC. We call it Republic Act 6395 as amended. NPC was granted an authorized capital stock of 50 billion corresponding to 500 million shares of stock at 100 per par value. At least, naka-generate sila ng 27.049 billion. From its creation up to the late 1980s, the generation, this started in 1936, Ito, 1936, nag-start ang NPC. Now, from 1980, the generation of power and its transmission through the nationwide transmission, we call it, pag nationwide na ang transmission, we call it the grid in the country was vertically integrated. Integrate ang transmission, centrally controlled and managed and wholly owned by NPC. So, wala nang iba, wala nang mga stocks dyan. It was now a government-owned and controlled corporation because ang kanyang generation of power and the transmission through nationwide, which is being now called the grid in the country, was vertically integrated, vertically integrated, centrally controlled and managed, and wholly owned by National Power Corporation. Now, okay. So sila na sa NPC, sila na ang manage, sila ang nag-supply, sila lahat-lahat sila ang gumawa. Okay. So in June 2001, Republic Act number 9136, otherwise known as the IPERA law. You are all aware of the IPERA law, meaning Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001. Imagine na, 2001, lumabas under Republic Act 9136. IPERA, meaning Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001. It was enacted, this IPERA law was enacted in 2001 to institute reforms in the industry. Aside from the reforms in the industry, the major aspects of the reform include restructuring of the entire power industry to introduce competition in the generation sector. Meaning to say, hindi na control sa NPC lahat. So, gi-welcome na sa government na may merong mga papasok na particularly in the generation. So, gi-restructure ang the entire power industry to introduce competition in the generation of electric power. So, okay na yung magka-supply, you are welcome. Number 2, reform. Change from government to private ownership. So parang nabibigatan na ang government nga, ano ba ito, lahat ng kuan, nag-subsidize na lang kami. So that's why ang ginawa is change from government to private ownership. Later on, sino yung private owner? I will discuss it with you. Next, number 3, reform. Introduction of a stable regulatory framework for the electricity sector. So meaning stable na ang framework sa electricity sector. Hindi na pareho before, is paiba-iba ito. Now, itong IPERA organized the industry into 4 sectors. Ano itong sectors? Remember these 4 sectors because this is very important in your cases. Generation, transmission, distribution, and supply. Yun ang 4 sectors under the IPERA law or the Electric Power Industry Reform Act. Okay. The structural reforms resulted, among others, in the creation of two government-owned and controlled corporation. Because of the IPERA law, nanganak itong NPC. There were 2 GOCCs formed. We call that the sum. Kanang sum ba na sa Bible, Psalm 41, ito. Ito sa generation sector is, ang sum, ang meaning ng sum is Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management Corporation. The sum. I-create yan because of the IPERA law and the National Transmission Corporation, which we call the Transco. Nakuha na ninyo. Bakit may NPC? Bakit may Transco? Saan sila galing? Galing sa IPERA law. Ano pang nandoon aside from the Transco? Nandoon ang SAM. Ano itong SAM? Ang SAM was created to take ownership of all existing generation assets. So paiba-iba na. So ang pag-control is talagang may gi-assign na para at least maganda ang pagkadala ng power generation of the country. So SAM was created to take ownership of all existing generation assets, independent power producers contracts, real estate, and all other disposable assets, and to assume all liabilities and obligations of the NPC. Ha? Listen, and to assume all liabilities and obligations of NPC. So sana ang SAM ang kinausap. Okay. The principal purpose of SAM is to manage the orderly sales, disposition, and privatization of NPC's assets with the objective of liquidating in an optimal manner all the NPC's financial obligations and stranded contract costs. On the other hand, so very clear na nga bakit nandoon ang SAM. On the other hand, Transco was created to take over the electric transmission function. Yung sa SAM, yung pag-dispose sa mga assets, pag-assume all the liabilities and obligations. So yun ang puso, meaning to manage the sales, the disposition, and the privatization of NPC's assets. Okay, nakuha na ninyo yan. Now, here comes Transco. Ano na naman itong Transco? Yun ang partner ng kuwan because to each his own. Yun ang gagawin mo. Ito ang gagawin mo. Okay. So Transco was created to take over the electric transmission function of NPC. So ang NPC wala na electric transmission function except yung tawag dito is the missionary electrification function of NPC. Nandoon na sila sa mga, yung parang mga remote rural areas, yun function yun jurisdiction yun ng NPC. So yun na ang NPC. So ang naggawa na dito is the SAM na pag mga non-generation functions, SAM. Pag generation and transmission function, it's the Transco, the National Transmission Corporation. Okay. No? Any question? Do you understand na? Nakakita na ninyo ang historical background of NGCP. Okay. Transco was created to take over the electric transmission function of NPC. And the responsibility for planning, construction, and centralized operation and maintenance of high voltage transmission facilities, including grid interconnections and ancillary services. NPC was retained as a GOCC. Hindi nawala ang NPC. It was retained as GOCC to perform the missionary electrification function. To manage the watersheds and dams, yun ang function sa NPC. Management of the Angat Dam. Okay, NPC yan. And then, to operate and maintain the generation assets transferred to SAM pending their disposal. So, ang SAM na, i-transfer sa NPC to SAM, ang SAM na bahala mag-dispose, and then, pagkatapos ng SAM, here comes the, itong Transco, I have already discussed the Transco, the National Transmission Corporation. So, again Transco was created under Republic Act 9136. Ano itong Republic Act 9136? It is the IPERA Law of 2001. Then Transco operated and managed the power transmission system that links power plants to the electric distribution utilities nationwide. Transco na yan. Hindi na NPC. Transco. The same law mandated the privatization of Transco. Okay. Now, the same law, the IPERA law, nagsasabi na dapat mag-privatize ang Transco through an outright sale or management concession agreement. Was there an outright sale? No, sir. Was there a management concession agreement? There was, sir. Try to read the management concession agreement to understand the franchise tax of Transco. to understand the whole process. Ano bang liabilities ng Transco? Ano bang liabilities ng NPC? Kung makita ninyo ang concession agreement which took effect January 15, 2009. Okay. Now there was a public bidding because welcome na nila ang mga private sectors. Was a public bidding conducted in December 2007. Imagine the IPIRA law was enacted 2001. But the public bidding of the Transco until December 2007. It was awarded to the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. Ano itong National Grid Corporation of the Philippines? Yun ang kasama ko sa LBAA, CBAA, yun ang kasama ko sa Court of Tax Appeals, yun ang kasama ko sa Supreme Court. He was my darling during my heydays. Okay. So it was awarded to the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, which eventually secured a congressional franchise. Ano itong congressional franchise, ladies and gentlemen? Congressional franchise through Republic Act 9511. Please memorize the Republic Act. Republic Act 7160, the LGC, Republic Act 9136, the IPIRA Law, Republic Act 9511. This is the franchise of National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. So that in order, parang pag magpunta ang NGCP sa inyong mga LGUs, here comes the NGCP, you are ready. Try to read their historical background. Try to read the concession agreement. Try to read the franchise by heart. Because at least pagpunta nila doon, you will know how to react. You will know how to persuade them to pay taxes. Do not coerce them. They are our bread and butter. Because sila nagbabayad sa taxes. Mahalin natin ang ating mga partners in crime. So eventually, itong NGCP, National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, eventually secured a congressional franchise to operate the transmission network, sa whole Philippines. Republic Act 951. On January 15, 2009. January 2009, how many years after? 2 years. Transco turned over the management and operation of the nationwide transmission system to NGCP. I-turn over na because NGCP ang nanalo sa bidding. Nandoon ang parang, ano ba yun, Monte de Oro. The owner o Banco de Oro. Okay, so turn over the management and operation of its nationwide transmission system to NGCP. Ownership of all transmission assets, however, listen, very important. Ownership of all transmission assets, however, remains with Transco. Meaning there was no outright sale. Because of the concession agreement, gitransfer, giturn over ang lahat ng assets of Transco. But the ownership, my dear ladies and gentlemen, the ownership remains with Transco. Any question? Okay, NGCP na yan. Walang question. It's either nga parang you do not understand or parang very clear na ang lecture ko sa inyo. Okay. After the Transco, NGCP. Okay. So let's discuss about NGCP. NGCP, National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. Pag magsasabi ng grid, yung the whole network, a vast network of electric lines, yun ang grid. So, NGCP is privately owned corporation in charge of operating, remember operation, maintenance, and development of the country's state-owned power grid. So, sila ang mag-operate, sila ang mag-maintain, sila ang mag-develop. Memorize that. Operate, maintain, and develop. It is an interconnected system that transmit gigawatts of power at thousands of volts from where it is made to where it is needed. The company performs its mandate as transmission service provider. Sila ang mag-transmit, sila ang provider. Okay. With the full awareness of its nature as a public utility. So ang kanilang nature as a corporation, it is a public utility. But it doesn't mean na they are vested with the powers of a governmental or a GOCC. It is the nature of the work classifies them as essential public utility. The nature. And in full compliance with the rules and regulations of the regulator and existing laws governing its transmission operations. So yun ang NGCP. Now, generation or the legislators, no, di ba, they passed the EPIRA law, and then the EPIRA introduced two major reforms, the restructuring and the privatization. Restructuring called for the separation of the different components of the power sector: generation, transmission, distribution, and supply. Electricity rates were unbundled to allow consumers to see each individual component of the electricity service they are paying for. Generation was privatized through the sale of generation assets. Transmission was spun off to government-owned National Transmission Corporation in preparation for its eventual privatization via concession. Okay, now I think it's time to open the provisions of the tax provisions. Okay, now before I discuss the case, it's very easy just listening the discussion of the case. Let's go muna to the provisions. Because these provisions, ito ang mga legal basis. Why I collected real property tax? I collected real property tax. No? And then, why nga I will institute the remedies? This is not to coerce in PC or in GCP to pay. But this is part of my job as treasurer because of the following provisions. Please listen to the following provisions. You have been reading this provision by heart sa local government code, but sometimes pag magbasa ka parang ang tagal ma-absorb ang provision, di ba? Kasi pag magbasa ka, iba ang iniisip mo kung baka darating dito ang Delta variant, baka hawaan ako or ano to. So forget about the variant. Sabi ko sa inyo, be positive. Do not think of the negative effects of the epidemic, no? Okay, or the pandemic. I mean. So let's first deal on Section 205. The listing of real property in the assessment roll. Why I collected from the NGPC. Why it appeared in my list of taxpayers. Why it appeared on the delinquent taxes. So Section 205 is my basis. Now, what is Section 205? Listing of real property in the assessment rolls. Paragraph D, real property owned by the Republic of the Philippines. Its instrumentalities and political subdivisions. Yung its instrumentalities, no? Yun na ang yung mga ginagamit sa gobyerno. Transco is an instrumentality. Political divisions is the LGUs, including the barangay. Now, these mga properties, no, owned by this group, particularly the Republic of the Philippines, they are exempted. Hindi sila mag-appeal sila sa assessment roll, but they will appear as exempt properties. But when I examined the assessment roll, it did not fall under the exempt properties, but in the taxable properties. Who am I to question the jurisdiction of the assessor? Bakit ito taxable? Dapat exempt ito. When it is favorable to the government, I will adopt it. But when it is not favorable, I will reject it. I'll tell you, ito na ang binigay ng assessor. This was discussed. This amount was discussed during the setting of targets in the BLGF. And these collections were included in my target. Once is i-exempt sa assessor later on, after na-submit ko na ang target ko sa BLGF, ma-decrease ang chance ko of collecting my quota, my target. Diba? So, in this case, kung collectible yan, kay taxable yan, no, I have to collect it. And when I collect it, if everything will be collected, my collection efficiency will shoot up. So that is favorable to my office, favorable to my collection activities. So I will not question. But if that was placed under exempt, I will question the assessor. Why exempt? Where in the provision of Book 2, Title 2 of the Local Government Code nag-exempt? Now here comes paragraph D. Real property owned by the Republic of the Philippines is instrumentalities and political subdivisions, the beneficial use of which has been granted for consideration or otherwise to a taxable person shall be listed, shall be valued, shall be assessed in the name of the possessor, not actually in the name of the owner. Pwede nga iba ang owner doon sa tax declaration, but since that was the use of the property has been transferred to another taxable person, he will become the possessor but not the owner. Possessor but not owner, because ang kanyang gipossess is just the beneficial use of the property. So, the grantee of the public entity if such property has been acquired or held for resale or lease. That's paragraph D. That is section 205. Let's go to section 206. Now, section 206 treats on the proof of exemption of real property taxation. I'll tell you, exemption is not automatic. Just like na ang provisions of the local government code, hindi automatic ang application. Remember, the provisions are there. You have to make it operative and effective in your local government unit. Those provisions must be enacted through an ordinance. Hindi automatic. How much more when it is exemption? Exemption is not automatic. As we have dealt, the first provision I presented to you was the exemption must be expressed in a clear and ambiguous term, unequivocal term, yung exemption. So ito, para applicable ang exemption, there must be proof of the exemption. Every person by and for whom real property is declared, who shall claim tax exemption for such property under this title Book 2, Real Property Taxation, shall file with the provincial, city, or municipal assessor within 30 days from the date of the declaration of real property. So wala na, because why? In PC pa ang owner dati. So that's why you cannot tell them nga within 30 days from the date of the declaration of real property. Sufficient documentary evidence. There must be documentary evidence to support the claim for tax exemption. So, ano itong documentary evidence in support of the claim of tax exemption? Corporate charters, title of the ownership, articles of incorporation, bylaws, contracts, affidavits, certification, mortgage deeds, and similar documents, concession agreement, pwede. Then, the franchise provision, pwede para i-present mo. Pero you will just go there and make yaw-yaw or complaints to the LBAE no? Is hindi yun pwede. I-submit mo nga, I am exempted, look at this, look at that. No? So, pwede namang mag-meeting tayo, assessor, treasurer, and the LBEE, together with the complaining taxpayer. Mag-meeting tayo, sir. Huwag mo nang isulat. Who knows nga, sa atin lang dito is masittle natin ang gusto nyo. Okay? Kana bang, you have to exercise. Sometimes you have to sleep with the enemy para makuha mo ang gusto mo. No? Sleeping with the enemy, meaning you have to be good, you have to be friendly with the taxpayers. But, hindi yung too much friendship naman, nga hindi na lang sila magbayad ng taxes. Oh, nako, iwalay tayo dyan. If you don't pay your taxes, then do not come near the tax collector, especially when she danced. Okay, now, that is section 206, no? If the required evidence is not, listen, if the required evidence is not submitted within the period herein prescribed, the property shall be listed as taxable. Hindi ka nag-submit, hindi nag-submit ang NPC, hindi nag-submit ang Transco, hindi nag-submit rin ang NGCP. So that's why failure to submit the evidence of tax exemption, ano ang mangyayari? That will be listed as taxable. No? The property shall be listed as taxable in the assessment roll. Okay. However, if the property shall be proven to be tax exempt, the same shall be dropped from the assessment roll. Pag ma-proven to, hala, they are able, no? May kuan sila, may point sila nga exempted ito. So pag exempted iso, okay, Mr. Assessor, are you willing to exempt? Let's conduct an ocular inspection because as per the franchise, as per the provisions of the local government code, if the equipment or if the property in the form of equipment and machineries are used for the transmission and generation of electric power, then that property is exempt. Transmission and generation because it is in the franchise law of the NGCP. But when they able to prove, they sent lahat ng mga complaints, petitions for exemption. But please, where are the reasons for exemption? So again, pero anyway, since there was that decision from the court, now, it was mandated nga the assessor and the treasurer will not refund, no? The NGCP will ask from NPC, at least, okay ako. Now, what about the assessor? The assessor will have to go to the power site, the site of the NGCP, to inspect whether this taxable building built by the city government, this kind of building, this kind of land built by the city government is exempt. I don't know what happened next. They went to that site, but I don't know if they accepted nga, this is a clubhouse. A clubhouse is not used for the transmission and generation of electric power. A clubhouse, nandun ang mga members of the clubhouse. They're discussing how to run their business. And then, what about the powerhouse? Meaning, nandoon ang mga makina, nandoon ang mga machines, nandoon ang mga equipment. Why? Is the land used in the transmission and generation of electric power? Nandoon ang mga machineries. But is that actually directly and exclusively used for transmission and generation of power? The three elements to be exempt must be present. Absence of actual use does not exempt you. Absence of directly use will not exempt you. Absence of exclusively use will not exempt you. Assuming it is exclusively used, but is it directly? Meaning to say, ang land, kinuha ang land and then parang include sa generation of transmission? They try to think of my position. Am I right? I am not saying they are wrong, It's up to you. Pero ako, I am asking you, am I right? Walang nag-answer. Takot kayo? Now, if I am right, I know because may basis ako. Okay, Section 206. Any question? Wala pa rin question. I'll proceed to Section 208. Okay, Section 208, notification of the transfer of real property ownership. There was a transfer of real property ownership. It was not discussed in the merits of the case. In the facts of the case, wala. But the notification of transfer, meaning once meron kang real property nga gi-transfer through sale, gi-transfer through concession, dapat i-notify mo ang assessor. Ano bang alam niya nga nandoon ang kual, iba ng may-ari, pag hindi mo i-notify? Di ba kung bibili tayo ng lupa, dapat mayroon magbayad tayo ng transfer tax. Pagkatapos ng bayad ng transfer tax, magpunta ka pang Register of Deeds to verify kung wala ba itong parang clear ba ito. Magpunta ka pang court clearance, wala ba itong kaso. Magpunta ka pa sa Sendro kung wala ba itong kaso sa Sendro. Magpunta pa kang DAN. Ang daming puntahan. Noon, punta ka lang sa Register of Deeds. Tapos, basta magbayad ka lang. What is important is your payment. I don't care kung ano yung mga sabi ng mga Sendro, mga DNR. Okay, now, so, was the assessor notified nga there was a concession agreement? Was the assessor aware of the IPIRA law? Can you blame the assessor for not knowing the current events? Maybe the assessor was so engrossed in his duties as city assessor. Pag-type lang ng tax declaration, bago. So, Section 208, and I will read. Any person who shall transfer real property ownership to another shall notify the city assessor concerned within 60 days. Gitransfer yon sa Transco to NGCP no January 15. Was there a notification nga, hoy, assessor, di na sa akon ang transmission assets of the Transco? 60 days, na-expire, wala pa. The notification shall include the mode of transfer. Anong mode of transfer? Concession. The description of the property alienated. O ano ba itong mga description? Powerhouse, clubhouse, administrative building. I was there. The initial inspection, I was there. Ito ginamit ng administration, ng mga office, ng mga clerks. Is this used in the generation and transmission of electric power? No, sir. No, ma'am. Okay. Then, the name and address of the transferee. The name and address of the transferee, yung gitransfera ng Transco assets. Anong the name niya? National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. Okay. So that's in Section 208. Let's go to the next section. Section 215. Section 215, classes of real property for assessment purposes. So, you must be knowledgeable kung ano bang classes for assessment purposes. For assessment purposes, real property shall be classified as residential, agricultural, commercial, industrial, mineral, timberland, and ito na ang pinagawayan, special. You're special to my heart in GCP. You're special to my heart, taxpayers of any kind, as long as you are inside Cebu City. No, the taxpayers of the real taxpayers of Mandawi, they are special to the hearts of Attorney Regal. Ito naman sa Talisay, special to the hearts, no, of the treasurer of Talisay. Huh? So make them special, but not for assessment purposes. Special. Now, who are entitled to the assessment as special? Basahin natin to. The city or municipality within Metropolitan Manila, no, the classes. Okay, through the respective sanggunian shall have the power to classify lands as residential, agricultural, timberland, or in accordance with their zoning ordinance. zoning ordinance nila, hindi ang assessor ang mag-classify kung timberland ba ito or special ba ito. It's the ordinance of the sangguniang panglungsod, pangguniang bayan, or no, hindi sangguniang bayan, sangguniang panlalawigan. Because real property is the domain, the terrain of the provincial assessor or the treasurer. So no, okay, deputized lang ang munisipyo. That's why walang mga respective sanggunian lang nilagay. So, based on the zoning ordinance, ito ang classification. Because the classification of the assessor, the local assessor, is based on the actual use of the property. Therefore, kung may bibilhin ang NGCP later, bibili kami ng lupa. So, exempt ito because this will be used for the transmission of and generation. Oh my God, mere intent on the use of the property does not exempt the property from assessment. You will not be classified as special until magamit ninyo, until it is put into use by the possessor or owner or the grantee, no? So ano bang use? Because why? Because assessment is based on actual use. Paano ko pag-assess nga bibilhin ba man ninyo o nandoon na binili na pero you don't know, wala pa sa inyong transmission development plan. Wala pa. So I will wait. So ang tax declaration wala pa, hindi rin na-transfer sa kanyang pangalan. It is still in the name of NPC or Transco. So anong mangyari? So NPC and Transco, just like my letter. My demand letter was addressed to NPC and Transco. NPC bar Transco. It was never addressed to NGCP. It's only nga since it was brought to the office of NPC before, ang nakatanggap ang NGCP kaya nandoon na sila. It's not my fault. They could have forwarded the collection bill or they could have forwarded the demand letters to the office of NPC. Oy, ito ang utang ninyo. Ang utang ay dapat babayaran para tayo ay pagkatiwalaan. At the same time, para hindi ma-auction ang real properties ninyo. Pag ma-auction na ito, i-auction ko ang lahat ng mga machineries for transmission and generation. What a catastrophe. That will make me unpopular. Decision very unpopular. That will masira ang mga political motives of our mga political personalities. Okay. So ganun ha. Now, let's go to the next, to 16. Very nice itong provision na ito. Special classes of real property. Why? Bakit na? Because ito na naman ang i-complain. All lands, buildings, and other improvements thereon, actually, directly and exclusively used for, nandoon, hospital, scientific, and, ito this portion, and those owned and used by local water district or government-owned or controlled corporation, GOCCs, this refers to GOCCs, rendering essential public services in the supply and distribution or generation and transmission of electric power shall be classified as special. Meaning to be classified as a special kind of real property and subject only to the 10% of the fair market value of the property to be classified is, in this case, they were not, or they were not a GOCC. NPC, GOCC. Transco, GOCC. Some GOCC. But the generation and transmission was already transferred to NGCP, no? Through the beneficial use. And it has been provided in the law na when the beneficial use is being transferred for consideration or otherwise to a taxable person, that property is no longer is taxable. And therefore, since it was transferred to a private entity, she cannot claim exemption under this provision because he is a private property. Only GOCC involved or doing functions in the generation and transmission of electric power shall be classified as special. Do you agree, ladies and gentlemen? May I hear some? Yes, ma'am. Are you listening? Attorney Tanyika?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
Yes, we are
May mga
listening.
tao ba tayong
Yeah,
nakikinig?
meron, ma'am. We have 57 participants out of
47.
62
Ma'am,
registrants.
nandito kami.
Okay, nandiyan din mo. Kay, I was worried nga lang. Ako na lang ganyan.
In case you need a break, ma'am, kasi iba rin yung tuloy-tuloy yung discussion, just signal us. We have reserved Mentimeter trivia type questions, ma'am.
Okay. Now, another. Let's go to the next, section 217. Actual use of real property as basis for assessment. I have been saying this provision a while ago. Real property shall be classified, valued, and assessed on the basis of its actual use, regardless of where located, whoever owns it, and whoever uses it. Meaning, even if in PC, as the owner, but the user of that property, meaning to say, the property is now kung saan na-locate ang property, o sino ang may-ari, o whoever uses it through the beneficial user theory, the property shall be classified on the basis of its actual use. I-discuss yun kanina, actual use is the basis. Let's go to 218, assessment level. Meaning to say, we have assessment level. Assessment level applied to the to the market value, that will be the taxable value. The taxable value, the taxable or assessed value times the rate of kanina rin na-mute. Okay. Now, assessment level. I repeat, kay parang na-mute ko kanina. Itong assessment level, it is the percentage applied to the market value to arrive at the taxable value or assessed value. Yung assessed value, i-apply mo ang rate of levy, depende ang rate of levy sa inyong local tax code or the omnibus code or the revenue code, whatever you call it. So, nandoon, i-apply mo, yun ang tax due. Nandoon ang tax due. What will become of the tax due? Titingnan ko lang yun. Di ba, maghanap ako nga, is this tax due already paid? Di ba, nandoon lang sa ating database. Titingnan ko sinong hindi nakabayad. Every week, by Friday afternoon, sinong nagbayad, sinong hindi nakabayad. Kung malaki ang bayad, I will send you a thank you letter. You are special to the hearts of the city government of Cebu City. You are special. Pero hindi nagbabayad, if this will not be paid within 7 working days, this property shall be auctioned. Imagine. Because of that, natatakot sila. They paid. Oh my God. That is what we call persuasion. Through, hindi naman coercive processes because that is allowed under the law, but itong persuasion through a simple, the art of collecting taxes. So your personality, I don't know if there is such thing as personality. That's why I'll tell you, as I've been telling all the managers of Veterans Bank, I'll tell you, treasurer and assessor, act like a treasurer. Try to develop your personality. Na paglabas mo sa munisipyo or sa kapitolyo, is you look like a treasurer. Bang, here comes the majesty, the queen. Di ba? I'll tell you, personality plays a very important role in the collection process. I'll tell you, through experience, especially when I wear miniskirt and then in front of the complaining taxpayer, I will cross my legs, this and that. That is a collection strategy. Di ba? Di ba, director, it's a collection strategy? That's very nice. I'll tell you. That's why, talagang, I don't know basta na-impressed yung iba. Well, just showing the legs, I don't commit any mortal sin. It's upon yung bang, how you look at me. Para bang, ito, I'm giving you something very, kuan ba? That will arouse you nga, para bang, it will make you active. Kung taxpayer ka, mawawala yung galit mo. Ma'am, sabi ng sekretary ko, ma'am, mayroong lawyer galit na galit, ma'am. Then I asked him, ma'am, sir, would you like to be served coffee or you like? No, it's not the coffee that I am coming for. It's your treasurer. Well, let him come in. I am better than the coffee. Oh, so, nandun ang taxpayer. Then I will get out from my swivel chair and I will sit in front of him, in front of the taxpayer with a crossed legs. May bawal that. Don't cross your legs when you're seated. No, do not believe that. You cross your legs. That is a collection strategy. So nandoon na. Pag nakita niyang legs ko, ay naku, nawawala yung kanyang galit. Para bang he was elevated to the heavens and to the skies. Then looking for the stars and the moons where to look for tax exemptions. Nawawala na siya, parang ganun. That is a collection strategy, ladies and gentlemen. So please improve your personality. Kanang act like a treasurer. Huwag kayong matatakot nga para bang, baka i-examine kami, ma'am, yung lifestyle check. Oh, that's part of being ikuan. I-lifestyle tayo, pero pag wala silang makita sa lifestyle, is bakit? Kung mag-wear ako ng mga dangling earrings sa mga 18 carats, bili ko sa Colon, is that expensive jewelries? Tingali, in the eyes of the beholder, expensive yun. Why? It's Mrs. Oliva. Pero you don't know nga, these are all fake. I don't wear genuine jewelries, ladies and gentlemen. I'm afraid it might be snatched. No, this one will be snatched. So that's why these are not true jewelries. These are, it's just a matter of how you apply makeup, of how you comb your hair. That's part of your collection strategy. Assessor and treasurer, please, when you go home, start throwing out your dress nga, para bang you go to the kuan with t-shirts lang and maong. No! Don't wear maong inside the office. It's bawal. You wear high heels. I don't allow my people in the Cebu City Treasury to wear flat shoes. No, sir. High heels. Why? That will add credence. That will add parabang confidence na to collect for more. Now, that's the assessment level, ladies and gentlemen. The assessment level, adto gyud ko anon sa mga sanggunian, hindi assessor ang mag-on sa assessment level. Next.
Ma'am Ophel.
Yes.
We'll give you a water break muna para you'll have water muna. So, in the meantime, we'll have the Mentimeter trivia pa rin tungkol sa iyong sarili, ma'am.
Thank you.
Can we do that, ma'am?
Okay.
Ayan. On the note na nagbigay ng points of navigation na po si Ma'am Ophel, kakaibang points of navigation, yung skirt daw, yung mini skirt niya, isang revenue generation technique daw yan. So, minsan nga, ito trivia. Tinanong ng mayor si Ma'am Ophel, bakit ang iksi-iksi ng skirt mo, Mrs. Oliva? Sabi ni Mrs. Oliva, respond niya sa mayor, sabi niya, the shorter my legs, my skirts are, the greater my collection would be. Yun po yung sabi ni Mrs. Oliva. Okay, now we'll go to Miss Sara Mitante para sa ating mentimeter.com trivia Q&A tayo pa rin. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Torn. For the next set of questions, may I request the participants to please go back to menti.com and use the code. Use the code 91105172.
Okay, please type in sa URL nyo sa address doon sa browser sa taas, www.menti.com. Tapos once in, you use the code 91105172. So this is actually a real-time quick survey trivia type. So lahat po mag-participate. So just to break the monotony pa rin yan.
Turns.
Yes, sir.
Excuse Turns.
Go ahead.
Ni-react ko dayon si Sir Jimmy Turns pag ingon ni Ma'am Ofelia nga. Kaya kuan ko no, new collection strategy tong pag-cross sa iyang legs.
Sana makasample si Ma'am Ophel paano yun mag-cross ng legs.
Paano kaya Turns pag lalaki yung treasurer Turns? Paano?
Paano daw pag lalaki yung
Oh, sabi ni Sir Jimmy Torso, let the legs do the talking daw. Oh.
Jimmy o CP Garcia, siya yung pasimuno sa topic na to eh. Nagtanong kasi siya tungkol sa NGCP.
Lalaki daw to,
katanungan dyan
sabi
sa
ni
chat
ano.
box. Mamaya,
Oh.
i-entertain natin yung mga questions dyan sa chat box.
Sige, Tons.
Okay. Go ahead, sir. Mayroon na bang participant dyan sa menti.com? Please, pag mayroon kayong cellphone, baka naman you can go to www.menti.com tapos yung code na yon gamitin niyo po. Okay. Nasa chat box po yung code. Okay, let's go ahead, sir.
Okay, Torns, we only have 10 participants for these Torns.
That would do.
Sige. Sige. So for question 1, where is the last LGU that she was designated? We have options: Tacloban City, Pasay City, and Toledo City.
Log in your answers now. Saan po huling na-designate as treasurer si Mrs. Oliva? Sa Tacloban po ba? Sa Pasay po ba? O sa Toledo? Yan, sabi ni Ma'am Jocelyn sa chatbox, Pasay daw. Yan. Yan. Nag-countdown pa po yung ating Mentimeter sa 10 participant. Makikita po natin yung mga kasagutan. Ayan.
So the correct answer is Toledo City. We have 5
Toledo.
participants who got the correct answer. Next question. What is Mrs. Ofelia Oliva's favorite pastime?
Ayan, favorite pastime ni Mrs. Oliva po. Ano yung choices, Sar?
So we have options. 1, watching Korean novelas. 2, watching news. And 3, watching Ipatulfo Mo.
Oh, Ipatulfo. Idol Rafi. Kasali pala yan. Watching news, watching Korean novela, or watching Rafi Tulfo. Yan. Anong sagot?
Ako tanong ko nun sa attorney, sabay ba ito nga we have also conducted dialogue with
Mute, RD.
Yeah, ang sagot is
The correct
watching
answer
Idol
is
Rafi.
watching Ipatulfo Mo.
Tangindi.
We have 3 participants who got the correct
Ayan,
answer.
pastime pala yan ni Mrs. Oliva, watching Idol Rafi. Next
Kita niya
question,
yung
Sar.
Torns, yung sa ano, Torns, yung sa
Oh,
food package Torns.
yung lechon package. Nanonood para si Mrs.
Di ba
Oliva.
gipatulpo yun, Torns?
Oo, pinatulpo. Yan pala yung pastime ni Mrs. Oliva. Yan. Yan. Next question, sir.
Question 3, for a particular topic that Mrs. Oliva discusses to her audience, how many hours does she prepare for this?
Yan, preparation for her
We
discussion.
have 24 hours or 1 day, 48 hours or 2 days, or 72 hours, 3 days.
Yes, please, log in your answer. Pag nagdi-discuss po si Mrs. Oliva ng isang topic, how many hours does she need to prepare daw? Yan. Sabi,
The correct answer is 72 hours or 3 days.
tatlong araw.
Mag-prepare si Ma'am Opi.
Ayan, kay ganyan kabusisi si Mrs. Oliva. 3 araw siya mag-prepare sa isang discussion. Next question, sir.
Very particular.
Ito. Parang ito yung revenue generation strategy question yata.
So the
Hindi
fourth
pa.
question, what is Mrs. Ofelia Oliva's maiden name?
Yung middle name niya. Ano kaya yun? Pascual ba? Yan yung mga choices. Kasi Mendoza. Ano yan, Sid? Yung nasa gitna? Monterola.
Yes. Monterola
Martinez.
Martinez.
So ano po yung maiden name ni Mrs. Oliva? Lagi niyo
May gani
answer,
walay kuan Mondragon.
Mundago. Ano yan? Yayamanin si Miss Oliva.
Oo, kanang mga
Wow,
binadako.
many got the correct answer. The correct answer is Mendoza.
Ito, revenue generation tips ito, panghuling question.
So this is the most interesting question.
Ito. Kakadiscuss lang ni Mrs. Oliva ang question na ito. I'm sure yung nakalagin sa
How
mental-
many inches is usually the length of Mrs. Ofelia Oliva's miniskirt from her knees?
Ayan.
So I have first 4 inches. Second,
Murag
6
baka
inches.
answer ani si Sir Jimmy Torns.
How many inches daw usually is the length of Mrs. Oliva's miniskirt? Ayan. Ba't nawala ako?
Torns kung babae daw nga treasurer kay legs no ang ipakita pero ingon si sabi ni
Sino yan?
The correct answer is 8 inches. Kisa kayo nakakuha sa
Wow.
correct answer.
Ayan. Okay, for these trivia questions, we'd like to acknowledge Attorney Regal M. Oliva as our source. Siya po yung informant namin sa mga interesting at flattering questions, trivia type na po yan. So, kung galit mo man po si Mrs. Oliva ay ang nagbigay lang ng mga information niya si Attorney Regal M. Oliva. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sid. Ophel, are you ready for the next part of your discussion, Ma'am Ophel? 3 days ka pala nag-prepare, ha?
Actually, nagkamali kayo doon nga 3 days. Usually, yung hours na ma-consume ko is yung hours sa makeup, sa damit. Pero when it comes to yung sa lecture ko, is magbasa lang ako sa provisions, then yung adlib ko, yung knowledge ko through experience, yun lang. Yun ang makadala sa kalami ba sa lecture. Kasi pag mag-prepare ka, you have all your mga presentation mo, then basa ka lang, wala kang mga adlib, wala kang mga ganon, hindi maganda ang lecture, di ba? Okay ba kayo? Now, I will start now with the last 2 provisions. The Board of Assessment Appeals and the effect of the appeal. So pag ang taxpayer is not satisfied with the decision of the assessor or the assessment of the assessor, or yung pagbayad niya is too high and oppressive, is pwede siyang makapunta sa local board of assessment appeals. Why? Because any owner or person having legal interest in the property who is not satisfied with the action of the local assessor in the assessment of his property may, within 60 days from the date of receipt of the notice of assessment, appeal to the Board of Assessment Appeals of the city or province by filing a petition under oath in the form prescribed for the purpose, together with copies of tax declarations and such affidavits or documents submitted in support of the appeal. So, muapilar na siya sa Local Board of Assessment Appeals, or in short, LBAA. Now, what is the effect of this assessment? Pag mag-assess, pag may mag-appeal ang taxpayer to the LBAA, it does not suspend the payment of real property taxes. So the effect of appeal on the payment of real property tax, no, is in no case shall suspend the collection of the realty taxes on the property involved as assessed by the assessor without prejudice to subsequent adjustment depending upon the final outcome of the appeal. Bayad muna bago entertainment. Okay. Now, let's go na to the case, no? So, I think I have discussed the important provisions related or applicable to the NGCP versus Oliva. Okay. Let us first take the Local Board of Assessment Appeals. So, yung when I send demand letters, nagpunta ang NGCP, ito ang facts of the case, ha? Nagpunta ang NGCP sa office, then nagbayad. But first, bago sila nagbayad, sabi nila, bakit sila ang magbayad? Sabi ko, Because of, kung magbayad kayo ngayon, maski babayaran ninyo ang tax ninyo, is that will be applied to prior year's delinquency. Mayroon tayong provision dyan. Application of tax payments, no? I-apply first on the prior year's delinquency bago isettle ang current year. Okay. So that's why, kung gusto ninyo, bayad mo under protest. That's why nagbayad sila under protest. Pagbayad nila under protest is, of course, ayaw ko namang magsabi nga, okay ka nang, okay lang ito. So pag magbayad ka under protest within 60 days or 30 days from the receipt of the protest, kailangan nga assign nga nagbayad na sila, paid under protest, no? Magpunta na sila sa LBAA. No, okay. So, payment under protest is a condition sine qua non, meaning it is a condition good nga before ma-entertain ang protest mo, there must be payment under protest. Otherwise, no, walang jurisdiction ang LBAA sa treasurer or the assessor. So payment under protest is a must. Now, yun ang facts of the case. So after that, that was, meaning to say, this is now the decision, no? Decision of the local board, of the Central Board of Assessment Appeals. Okay. Tapos na sa Local Board of Assessment Appeals. Anong nangyari sa kanilang petition sa, now, when it comes to dakuan, kung mag-petition ka, o magreklamo ka, mag-complain ka sa Local Board of Assessment Appeal, ang tawag ninyo is the NGCP is the petitioner. Ang treasurer, o kay ako mang isa, kung appeal ang assessor, kasali ang assessor dyan, is we are the respondents. Kami ang mag-answer sa kanilang complaints. That's why, ang tawag namin respondents. Pag mag-appeal na nga to sa Central Board of Assessment Appeals, ang tawag doon sa petitioner NGCP is petitioner appellant. Ang tawag naman namo is respondent appellee. Okay. So what happened to the LBAA? Ang LBAA nagsabi na it was filed out of time. So the case was dismissed or the petition was dismissed by the Local Board of Assessment Appeals. Okay. So ngayon, ang sabi doon sa Local Board of Assessment Appeals, na after a careful consideration of the instant petition, we take notice of the fact that the same was instead filed out of time. The reason for the dismissal of the case was it was filed out of time. Accordingly, we are constrained to dismiss this case. However, this order is without prejudice to any action or representations that the petitioner may initiate or make to the proper government agency, which is the CBAE, the Central Board of Assessment Appeals, with respect to its claim of alleged tax exemption under this franchise. Okay. So, yun ang decision ng Local Board of Assessment Appeals on the question of the timeliness, no? So that's why, sabi ng Local Board of Assessment Appeals, the board, however, finds that the petitioner it's the Central Board of Assessment Appeals. Now, in each paper submitted to the board, no? In its position paper, so nagpunta na ang NGCP sa CBAA. In its position paper submitted to this board on November 2016, petitioner appellant raised the following issues. In the Central Board of Assessment Appeals, ang issue nila ito na. Number 1, whether or not the petition filed by NGCP before the respondent appellee LBAA was filed out of time. Number 2, whether or not NGCP is exempt from payment of real property taxes on the properties used in connection with this franchise granted under RA 9511. Whether or not the property subject of the petition and appeal should be classified as special and assessed at 10% of the fair market values for the period 2001 to 2008. Yun ang kanila, hindi yung sa kanilang 2009. So yun ang mga issues of the case nga that was elevated, no, to the Central Board of Assessment Appeal. At the same time, the respondent appealee, the Treasurer of Cebu City, also presented essentially the same issues yung doon sa LBAA. but specifying tax declaration, there were two tax declaration which are the subject of the instant case. No, the subject. So yung dalawang tax declaration, yung tax declaration on the buildings, not in other properties, no? So on the issue of the timeliness, so number one issue, timeliness. The board, however, finds that petitioner appellant and the respondent appellee have different interpretations on the issue of timeliness in the filing of the appeal before the LBAA. The appellant posits that its petition before the LBA was timely filed, citing compliance with Section 252 of the Local Government Code in paying its tax assessment under protest, and Section 226 giving it 60 days to file a petition before the LBAA. On the other hand, the treasurer in his position paper claimed or cited Section 206 of the Local Government Code, which provides that any person who claims tax exemption on real property declared has a 30-day period within which to submit sufficient evidence which they failed to comply. Proof of exemption, that is, we have discussed kanina, Section 206. No, okay. Now, on the issue of exemption of real property tax, the petitioner appellant NGCP asserts its claim of being exempt from payment of real property taxes on properties used in connection with its franchise, the Republic Act 9511. No? Now, let's go to the Section 9, the tax provisions. Listen to this tax provision in the franchise of NGCP, Republic Act 9511. In consideration of the franchise and rights granted, the grantee in GCP, its successors or assigns, shall pay a franchise tax. Franchise tax, that is a business tax, equivalent to 3% of all gross receipts. That's precisely, ang gitax dito ang kanilang receipts derived by the grantee from its operation under this franchise. Said tax on the gross receipts shall be in lieu of income tax and any and all taxes, duties, fees, and charges of any kind. It refers again to the business tax. Nature or description levied, established, or collected by any authority whatsoever, local or national, on its franchise, rights, privileges, receipts, revenues and profits, o pabalik-balik na ito, revenues and profits, and on properties used in connection with its franchise, from which taxes, duties, and charges. So it's not so specific nga, ano ba itong properties? What kind of properties, no? Used in connection with its franchise from its taxes, duties, and charges. The grantee is hereby expressly exempted. So this might be the properties nga in connection with this franchise used in the transmission and generation of power, which was, we already exempt that. So the grantee is hereby expressly exempted, provided that the grantee, its successors or assigned, shall be liable. Here is the provision, which is very clear, no, and ambiguous. Provided that the grantee, the NGCP, its successors or assigned, shall be liable to pay the same taxes on the real property estate. The same taxes as other corporations are now or be required by law to pay. Meaning, shall be liable to pay the same taxes on the real property estate, buildings, and personal property, no? Exclusive of this franchise. Ang dami namang mga personal property, not only real property. Estate, buildings, and personal property, exclusive of this franchise. Meaning, while labot in franchise. Provided further that payment by grantee of the concession fees due to some, the private sector assets and liability management, under the concession agreement shall not be subject to income tax and value-added tax. Okay. So, very clear in Section 9. So, yun ang, are they exempted in the payment? On the other hand, anong sabi ng treasurer? Sabi ng treasurer doon is, claims, no? The city treasurer claims that the property subject to the notice of assessment had been included in the assessment roll as taxable, and that NGCP is not absolutely exempt from payment of real property tax because even if the franchise of NGCP provides that it is liable to pay the same taxes on the real estate na nandoon sa NGCP franchise, buildings and personal property exclusive of this franchise. So this is based on the fact that NGCP did not have the subject properties registered as not taxable or failed to provide evidence to justify a claim of exemption. Let us, kung mag-claim tayo ng exemption, let us not just concentrate on reading the provision. Show us why you are exempted. Oh, di ba? Okay, so that is the second issue. Let's go to the third issue, the issue of belonging to a special class of properties. I've discussed it with you kanina. They are no longer GOCC, no? The subject of the instant appeal cannot be classified as properties belonging to the special class and entitled to a special assessment, no? Which specifies the requisite for proving a claim for tax exemption. Respondent appellee also cites Section 216 of the Local Government Code in the argument to it. Okay, anong sabi ng respondent appellee? Sabi ng respondent appellee, the treasurer, only those properties owned and used by local water districts and GOCCs rendering essential public service in the supply and distribution or the generation and transmission of electric power shall be classified as special. The requisites for classification of the properties as special is not satisfied. The assessment level of 10% cannot be made to apply. First is the claim that they are all exempted from taxes, real property taxes. And now, they are again claiming they should be classified as special class. They don't want to be they don't want to pay, they want to be exempted from real property taxes. And now, they want to be reclassified to a special class. So, parang medyo, I was confused, no? So, respondent appellee, the treasurer goes on to say that because these properties do not belong to the special classes of property, the assessment level should be based on Section 217 of the Local Government Code, which provides as basis its actual use regardless of where located, whoever owns it, and whoever uses it. On the other hand, sabi ng NGCP, there is no dispute that the property subject of tax declaration 582 and 583 were owned and used by NPC Transco during the period 2001 to 2008. Before NGCP took over the operation, management, and maintenance of Transco's nationwide electric power transmission, including Transco's real properties pursuant to the concession agreement. NGCP claims that the classification of the properties as commercial, it was classified as commercial, no? So distribution, murag is commercial, mura sa it's industrial because there was a supply of electric power, no? And the assessment, pero anyway, commercial, industrial, the same lang ang among assessment level. And the assessment of 35% of fair market value, when it is commercial or industrial, under the local government code, is either 40 or 50, but under our local tax code, it is 35% assessment level on the fair market value from 2001 to 2009, including the year. 2001 to 2008, that was the debt or that was the obligation of NPC Transco. But in 2009, they assume there was a turnover, sila na ang NGCP, the whole 2009. So that was parang included in the demand letter was there 2009. Aron pabayaran ang current year. Now, let's go to the rolling of the board. What board? The Central Board of Assessment Appeals. The dismissal by the LBAA of the appeal subject of this petition is based on its finding that the appeal was filed out of time. Okay. The order of the LBAA referred to in the petition entitled NGCP against Oliva, the aforementioned case was dismissed by the LBAA for lack of merit, it appearing that the same was filed out of time as required by law. It must be noted that the above-mentioned case was brought before the Supreme Court and was docketed as nagpunta silang Supreme Court. Now, there is no clear explanation provided for by the LBAA regarding its finding of an untimely filing of the appeal. So the Local Board of Assessment Appeal, there was no clear explanation kung bakit it was untimely filed, which was made the basis of its dismissal. The timeliness of a filing of an appeal before the LBAE is provided for in Section 226 and 252 of the Local Government Code. So, Local Board of Assessment Appeals. So, not satisfied. So, next is Section 252, the payment under protest. They paid under protest. That's why they went to the LBAE, dismissed ang ilang complaint. They went to Central Board of Assessment Appeals, the same, dismissed pa rin. So it is clear, according to CBAA, it's clear from its appeal before the LBAA as provided for in Section 226 of the Local Government Code and pay the taxes under protest under Section 252. It would therefore seem that the timeliness referred to by the LBAA order would be the failure of the NGCP in its claim for exemption to submit evidence within 30 days that the properties are tax exempt and should therefore be removed from the assessment roll as taxable properties. That is, yung ang filed out of time. So the Supreme Court in NGCP versus Oliva Gapon ruled that, first, this was the ruling of the Supreme Court. First, tax exemptions must be clear and unequivocal and must be directly stated in a specific legal provision. In the present case, Section 9 of Republic Act 9511 provided for NGCP's tax liabilities and exemptions. Okay. Second, sa Supreme Court, the in lieu of all taxes, be careful because lahat-lahat na parang na-confuse ito sa in lieu of all taxes because there was a time, I think it was Bayantel, I think it was Paranaque, Bayantel, Paranaque, or Quezon City. Paranaque maybe. So, Bayantel nga in lieu of all taxes. Pero, hindi na isali ang sa real property tax. That's why they made another franchise. Parang there was an amendment, sinali na. That's why ang Bayantel, the smart, na exempted. Now, in this case is, the in lieu of all taxes clause is strictly limited to the kind of taxes, taxing authority, and object of taxes specified in the law. The tax provision under Section 9 of the Act NGCP franchise, yung gidesignate kanina, Section 9. So let's go further. The Supreme Court in the NGCP versus Oliva case made a categorical ruling on the interpretation of the in lieu of all taxes clause of the NGCP franchise. It is very clear according to the Supreme Court. It is very clear that NGCP's payment of franchise tax exempt it from payment of real property taxes on properties used in connection with its franchise. However, NGCP's tax exempt status on real property due to the in lieu of all taxes clause is qualified, meaning di-qualify doon sa franchise na yan. NGCP shall be liable kay og in lieu of all taxes, period na sana. Hindi na sana dinagdagan na nga NGCP shall be liable to pay real property taxes o ganon. So, it was qualified in that franchise tax provision. NGCP shall be liable to pay the same tax as other corporations on real estate, buildings, and personal property exclusive of this franchise. The phrase exclusive of this franchise means that real estate, buildings, and personal property used in the exercise of the franchise are not subject to the same tax as other corporations. So, if the subject properties are used in connection with NGCP's franchise, the NGCP is exempt from paying real property taxes on the subject properties. If the subject are not used in connection with the NGCP's franchise, kung it is not used, then the assessment level should be based on actual use, not on the special class. It is clear, therefore, that NGCP, because of its payment of franchise tax, is exempt from paying real property tax on the subject properties covered by these two tax declarations as the subject property are used in connection with this franchise. Now, the properties involved here are office buildings, commonly classified as commercial. These buildings are adjacent to each other. Parang ganun lang, parang nagkaharap. One of them is the Visayas System Operation Building, which houses the equipment and machineries that monitor and control the flow of electricity. Gusto nila na i-exempt itong Visayas System Operation Building because it houses the equipment and machineries na monitor and control the flow of electricity in the entire Visayas area. Masisira daw ang mga buildings pag hindi ito i-monitor using that building doon. Masisira daw ang mga machines. Now, the operation of such equipment and machineries are necessary to ensure the efficient and reliable transmission of electricity. The other building houses the generator set na nag-house sa generator which provides backup power for the equipment and machineries in the Visayas System Operation Office to ensure that their operations are not interrupted at any time. The monitoring and control of the flow of electricity for the whole Visayas area is operated 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. So therefore, it's up for you to judge whether it is actually, directly, and exclusively used. Now, the appealee, the treasurer, has not controverted the claim of petitioner appellant in NGCP on the use of these properties. This exemption is for taxable year 2009 onwards, for so long as the properties continue to be used in connection with their franchise. As to the period 2001 to 2008, the properties were under NPC Transco, and Transco had actual and beneficial use and possession of this property during the period. Yun ang sabi ng Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in the same NGCP versus Oliva that the taxes due for the period 2001 to 2008 are the liability of NPC Transco, who had possession and beneficial use of the subject properties. The subject properties were under the control of NPC Transco. No? So yun ang sabi ng Supreme Court. So therefore, the ownership use of the properties covered by the subject tax declaration from 2001 to 2008 remain uncontroverted. These were the properties owned and used by NPC Transco, a non-government organization engaged in the generation and supply of electricity. So that's why we have here a nakabold ang provisions. Those owned and used by the entity in the supply and distribution or generation and transmission of electric power shall be classified as special. So that's why this property should have been classified as special, sabi ng Supreme Court. NGCP, who had interest in paying the final notice of demand, paid the full amount of the taxes assessed from 2001 to 2000. That's true. They paid under protest on November 11, 2010. So, paid the full amount of taxes from 2001 to 2009 as it faced the possibility that the subject properties would be sold at public auction by the city government. Since they paid under protest, hindi ko parang na-included in the properties to be auctioned by the city government. We proceeded with our auction, but hindi ko isinali ang NPC because it was paid although under protest. Now, if the property is paid under protest, the proceeds or the tax collected should be placed under trust fund. Hindi pa yung pwedeng magpunta sa general fund of the city. Why? Because under protest pa yun eh. What if kung manalo ang NGCP? Ibalik. Pag matalo, atin na. Pag there is now a decision na ito i-really tax due, babayaran is doon ko na i-transfer ang proceeds of the taxes paid to the general fund of the city para magamit for further appropriation for further expenditure. Now, according to the Supreme Court, taxes are not debts but NGCP's payment of NPC Transco's tax liabilities made NPC Transco indebted to NGCP. Article but taxes alone, according to the Supreme tax alone, they are not utang. They are not debts. That's why if we define in the local government code, ano yung taxes is, taxes are financial burdens. They are the moral obligation of the taxpayer. Hindi na sabihin, they are debts, no. But here, because nagbayad ang NGCP sa payment of NPC and Transco tax liabilities, therefore, NPC Transco is indebted to NGCP. Article 1236. Article 1236 of the Civil Code is applicable in the present situation. Ano yung sabi sa 1236? NGCP has an interest in the payment of NPC Transco's real property taxes from 2001 to 2008. NGCP will not be able to exercise its franchise should the local government or the treasurer will auction the subject properties. On the other hand, the city treasurer is bound to accept NGCP's payment of the taxes due from NPC Transco. NGCP's remedy then is to demand, not from the city treasurer of Cebu, not from me, but from NPC Transco, the amount of taxes which redounded to their benefit. Ang amount did not redounded to the benefit of the city, but it redounded to the benefit of NPC Transco. Kasi binayaran. So, kung magpa-reimburse sila, hindi sila maghingi ng refund sa Cebu City government. Wala kaming benefit na kuha. But they must be asking for refund or reimbursement from NPC Transco. However, the city treasurer of Cebu City may collect real property taxes only in the proper amount. I feel man na proper yun. Because I really observe the provisions of the Real Property Tax Code. So, should refund to NGCP in excess at its payment. Ang gimin dito na Supreme Court, in excess, pag ma-reassessed or it will be found by assessor nga hindi nila gideclare as exempt but actually ginamit ito in the transmission and generation, dapat mag-refund tayo. But it is not refund. It should be tax credit, ladies and gentlemen. Never refund a tax voluntarily paid. Apply it as tax credit for future tax liabilities. Okay. Now, another is the City Assessor of Cebu is hereby directed. First, sinasabi ha, NGCP asked for sa NPC, sa bayad. Number 1. Number 2, ang City Assessor is hereby directed by the Supreme Court to observe the special class of properties provision because these are owned and used by NPC Transco, a non-government corporation engaged in the generation and supply of electric power and therefore assessed at 10% of its assessed value. Okay. Now another, the city assessor na naman is directed to compute the proper amount of taxes, although hindi ang assessor ang mag-compute sa proper amount of taxes. The treasurer will compute and then if found nga sobra is not to refund NGCP, I will really write NGCP nga I will apply it as tax credit for your future liabilities as long as you are here. I'm sorry I cannot make a refund. Nagasto na sa aming budget. Okay. So ordered. Yun ang sabi ng Supreme Court. But this decision, I'll tell you ma'am, bakit alam ng Central Board of Assessment Appeals na may ganitong decision ng Supreme Court? Ito ang nangyari. Natalo sa LBAA. Pagpunta sa Central Board of Assessment naman. So nagpunta sila ng Court of Tax Appeals. Basahin ninyo ang Court of Tax Appeals decision, napakaganda. I am 101% ni-agree with them. Gidiscuss in detail sa Court of Tax Appeals. So gipa-review nila, they have a petition for review doon sa Court of Tax Appeals. Ang Court of Tax Appeals is gidinay ang kanilang petition for review. So again, nagpa-petition sila for review for partial consideration. So for consideration, review for reconsideration. Ang ginawa ng Central Board of Assessment Appeals, it was partially granted. Partially granted meaning ipa-assess ng assessor. But the same pa rin na taxable sila. So yun ang nangyari sa Court of Tax Appeals. Kaya yun ang partially granted, nagpunta silang Supreme Court, doon sa ang NGCP. So pagpunta ng Supreme Court, na petitioner ang NGCP, respondent na naman ang treasurer. And at the same time, naging petitioner ang treasurer, respondent na naman ang National Grid Corporation, NGCP. So daon, yung decision nga I have just mentioned to you, Yun ang sinunod. Now, when last week, I called up Cebu City Office, the Real Property Tax Division, and asked them for the records of the case, particularly the paid under protest notice in writing by the NGCP. Parang nawawala na daw. Okay. So I told them, I asked them, what happened to yung order na Supreme Court na ipa-reassess and then re-examine the properties. And if there are properties found to be exempt or 10% special class is yun, ipa-apply and then return to the NGCP. So, nagpunta daw doon sila with the assessor, with the lawyer of the NGCP, at saka yung mga tao sa CBAE, Central Board of Assessment Appeals. So, ito taxable pa rin, taxable sa clubhouse. So, sabi ng kanilang lawyer nga parang ipadala pa niya sa Manila. So, hindi na namin kasalanan yung kung wala pang parang compliance. Why? Because mag-refer pa daw sa Manila head office ng NGCP. So, yon ang rest the case. I now rest my case, no? Yung pag-explain ko sa kaso ko. If there are questions, go ahead. Again, I would like to repeat my disclaimer nga ganito ang desisyon ng Supreme Court, ng CBAE, ng Court of Tax Appeals. Yun ang desisyon nila. So, sa kanila lang yun. What I was explaining to you was my own opinion also. And I para bang i-respect yung naman ang opinion ko because this is favorable to the local government unit collecting the tax. Ladies and gentlemen, I am now open to direct examination or cross-examination.
Thank you, Mrs. Oliva. Ayan. What is interesting in the case kasi yung ini-emphasize ni Ma'am Ofelia as our points of navigation, ang sinabi ng Supreme Court, exempted yung properties used in connection with this franchise. Therefore, mayroon tayong opening, yung sinasabing Mrs. Oliva, what if hindi used in connection with the franchise yun? Kasi yung sa ating direksyong tinutumbok, exempted yung NGCP. Kasi nandoon yung in lieu of the of other taxes. So, yun yung opening na nakikita natin, yung sinasabi ni Ms. Oliva na example is yung mga clubhouses. At saka pangalawang opening na sinasabi ni Mrs. Oliva, sinasabi kasi ng Supreme Court na the city treasurer is not obliged to refund to NGCP because taxes are not debt. Ito medyo magandang opening dito kasi minsan nalilito tayo, tatanggap pa tayo ng bayad ng buwis kung na hindi naman siya yung dapat magbabayad. Dito sabi ng Supreme Court, kasi naibayad hindi dapat liable si NGCP, si NTC yata dapat yung liable, naibayad na. Anong sinabi ng Supreme Court? Sabi ng Supreme Court, the treasurer is not obliged to return or to refund. Bagkus sinasabi ng Supreme Court, doon maningil si NGCP kay NPC. Yan parang it settles our questions na should we accept tax payment from just anybody. So pag nakatanggap kayo ng any payment, sabi ng Supreme Court, taxes are not debt. So doon siya maningil sa dapat kung sino man yung dapat magbayad. Ayan. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are now open for questions. Sabi nga ni Mrs. Oliva, Sid, do we have questions from the chat box, Sid? Yeah, can they read the question from the chat box, Sid?
Yes, attorney, meron po tayong question dito. From Melanie Vargas, sabi niya, Ma'am Ofelia, does RA 6938 Cooperative Code of the Philippines does it still exempt under Section 234 of RA 7160?
Yeah, that is still provided under Section 234, Paragraph D of the Local Government Code, exemptions from real property taxes. So,
hindi siya withdrawn, ma'am. Hindi siya withdrawn.
Wala. Only GOCC. Ang cooperative are not GOCCs.
Pero
and they are explicitly exempted from payment of real property taxes.
May requirement yun, ma'am, yung dapat naka-register pa rin sa CDA sila.
Yes, dapat pa rin.
Okay. So dapat again we go back to the proof of exemption. Dapat yung mga cooperative sila yung mag-present ng documents na exempted sila. If ever, ma'am?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Sid, any other question from the
So far, Torns, wala na dito sa chat box natin, Torns. Siguro kuhang-kuha nila yung discussion ni Ma'am Ofelia.
I'd like to solicit si Sir Jimmy of CP Garcia kasi siya yung pasimuno sa topic na to. Sir Jimmy, tungkol doon sa question mo na natanggap mo yung nasa sa iyo po yung collection part, tapos ikaw yung parang question ng NGCP, sumusunod ka lang naman sa assessment role. Sir Jimmy, pasok. Sir Jimmy of CP Garcia. Ayan, wala pa yata si Sir Jimmy. Ayan, ma'am. Yeah.
Before ni Sir Jimmy turns, I'd like to remind everyone to kindly please accomplish the evaluation form that is sent to the link. Here's a chat box ninyo. You can click on the evaluation form because that will be used for your certificate of participation. So please do.
Yeah. Balikan natin yung punto na sinasabi ng Supreme Court, yung in connection with the use of the franchise lang po yung exempted sa NGCP. So what does this mean, ma'am? Pag sinasabi ng NGCP po ba na ako po ay exempt, does the treasurer have to do groundwork or is it the assessor na magpunta sa field na pag-verify whether it is in connection with the franchise, ma'am?
Well, under the Real Property Tax Code, it should be the assessor because that is his domain, his function.
Yeah.
But as also a co-generator of real property tax revenue, I will always go with the assessor to verify if the assessor will comply with the provisions of the local government code.
Mayroong interesting kang nasabi kanina tungkol sa lupa ng NGCP. In fairness, wala po tayong side pa ng NGCP ngayon kasi sabi ko nga, may little battle ito sa field. Sabi mo, yung lupa in relation ba daw yan sa generation of transmission, generation, and whatever ng NGCP sa franchise. So, sabi mo kanina, nabanggit mo, that is not in connection with the franchise, yung lupa. Can you elaborate with that on that, ma'am?
I did not say nga that is not in relation to the franchise. I said nga yung lupa is not actually directly and exclusively used for transmission and generation purposes. So, how can they prove? According to them, yung sa Supreme Court ruling nga, they prove nga gagamitin daw 24 hours a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mas ginagamit yan. Hindi naman yun isasali sa generation of
yun
power.
Yun yung sabi natin, ma'am, what is clear, yung mga machineries, yun yung gamit talaga sa franchise in connection with generation and transmission. Pero yung lupa, questionable pa yun. So, yun yung points of navigation natin. It's up to them to prove na this is in relation with their franchise. Ma'am, is that what we're meaning, ma'am?
Yeah, because itong exemption is not automatic. Ha? Pabalik-balik ko yan. It is not automatic. It shall be proven. And how do you prove the exemption? Submit affidavits, submit charters, submit bylaws, submit articles of incorporation. Particularly, dapat it must be examined by the assessor na kung ni-conform ba to the provisions of the local government.
Yung burden of proving.
Is it used in the generation and transmission? Pag hindi used, ay naku, huwag.
So it's up for them to submit proofs. Ika nga doon sa field operation na ng ating assessor. Now, pangalawang puntong sinasabi ko kanina, ma'am, sinasabi ng Supreme Court dito, taxes are not debt. So kung sino mang yung nagbayad, wala na tayong pakialam. Tanggapin ba natin lahat-lahat po yan, ma'am?
Tanggapin ang ano?
For example, in this case, ma'am, kasi sabi, si NGCP yung nagbayad, sana hindi siya liable kasi si NPC yata yung liable sana. This time, sabi ng Supreme Court, hindi dapat isauli ni Mrs. Oliva yung nabayad ng NGCP. Doon siya maningil kay NPC. Does that mean na tatanggap na lang tayo ng buwis, ma'am, kung sino mang yung magbabayad, miski wala doon sa assessment roll?
Yes, that is my para bang request ko sa lahat ng treasurers. Maski there is a parang claimants to one property. Among the claimants, 8 sila nga gustong magbayad. Tanggapin yung 8. Anyway, later
just
on.
To exaggerate my point, ma'am, just to emphasize. Example, I'd like to pay for the real property tax of the SM, yung kay Sir Henry C. Tatanggapin mo po ba, ma'am?
Tanggapin ko. Kay voluntary ang imong ka na. And remember, taxes voluntarily paid can never be refunded. Bakit magbayad ka kay Henry C?
Tapos sabi ng Supreme Court, kung gusto kong maningil, hindi kay sa'yo. Doon ako maningil kay Henry C.
Kay Henry C. Because of the principle, the doctrine of solution in debate.
Yun yung parang
nobody must enrich themselves at the expense of others.
So that's it.
Ang mabenefited dito, ang NGCP. So kung sino ang na-benefited sa action ng NGCP, siya ang magbayad. So doon siya magsingil sa NGCP o sa NPC, hindi sa treasurer.
Now, we have live questions, live interaction
Yes.
dito sa ating participant. Ma'am. We have Sir Jimmy of CP Garcia. Make it short, Sir Jimmy. Pasok, Sir Jimmy. Jimmy of CP Garcia. Jimmy, please.
Yes, attorney. Good,
Yeah, go ahead,
good
sir.
afternoon.
We don't see you. We cannot see you, Sir Jimmy. Kindly turn on your video cam, Sir Jimmy.
Actually, attorney, may problema kasi yung ano, yung camera ng laptop ko. Baliktad yung ano eh.
Baliktad yung ulo mo kanina eh. Sige, go ahead na lang. Sayang, di namin
yes,
pakita
attorney.
yung kagwapuan mo.
Actually,
Okay, go ahead.
attorney, yung ano, yung sinabi ni mo Ofelia kanina, talagang may natutunan ako. Kasi dito sa amin, yung...
Pakila ka, Sir Jimmy.
nire-request
Medyo mahina yung dating mo sa amin.
yung nire-request nila na exemption is yung property kasi is land, yung property.
Yung
Tapos
rene-request na exemption is yung property. Come again, Sir Jimmy?
Land.
po.
Land, okay.
Yes. Tapos sabi ni Ma'am Ofelia na
Hmm.
indirectly, kung hindi involved sa sa operation, ito lang hindi exempted. Kaya sabi ko ni assessor, i-inspection mo yung property kasi sabi ng ibang kasamahan ko dito is yung properties hindi na ginagamit. Parang parang tambakan lang ng mga nila.
No. Pagtambakan lang, walang transmission and generation. The more that will become taxable.
And it's up for them to prove that it is used in their franchise.
There is no need of proving. Kaya ma-prove natin yung tambakan ng garbage.
Oo, totoo.
Picture na lang. Picture, ma'am. Proof na.
Yung property na yan will be used for pollution, anti-pollution and environmental protection. So they can claim, but not the transmission and generation of power.
Yes, yan. Buti na lang wala si NGCP ngayon dito. Ayan, I'll go to Attorney Celine Andrade. May NGCP ba sa Valenzuela, Attorney Celine? Yan, meron yata. So, any pointers on this note, Attorney Celine? Tungkol doon, may nag-request na ba sila ng exemption sa office niyo, Attorney Celine?
Meron po kaming NGCP. Parang same din sa kanila. Naghingi po sila ng exemption, pero may kaso din po kami.
Yun yung mga little battles.
Pagkakaiba namin kay Ma'am Oliva is hindi sila nag-payment under protest. So sa local board, panalo, yun ang naging namin, defense namin na no payment under protest.
Tanong ko lang, Attorney Celine, may kaso kayo pero mayroon na tayong precedent. Saan sila pumapasok doon sa question nila, sa kaso nila?
Ang kaso nila yung as exemption naman.
Okay.
Yung exemption nila. So, di sila,
okay.
ang defense namin yung payment under protest which they did not do. So, yun yung pending ngayon.
Technical yata yun. Ladies and gentlemen, Attorney Celine Andrade, City Assessor ng Valenzuela City. Kasama ko po yan sa focus group discussion. Ini-enhance po natin yung ating Mr. Pao, yung manual ng mga assessor. Any question from the participant pa po? Ayan, any question or any good reaction? Yes, Ma'am Ophel?
Attorney, ito lang sana ang request ko sa lahat ng treasurers and assessors na let us focus on the non-exemption of the NGCP. Pareho tayo ng parabang let us lament the fact nga they are not really exempted. Bang dapat pareho tayo nga ito talagang hindi kayo exempted because ito ang interpretation namin sa franchise. And I just hope nga BLGF Region 7 will initiate nga mag-initiate ang BLGF nga ito is hindi exempted.
RD, can we do that officially? Kaya nga meron kaming ganitong platform, yung parang informal interaction para hindi tayo doon sa kapihan nating live. RD, we should initiate daw a uniform stance on this matter, RD.
Ito, Attorney, from the informal forum, let us make it formal.
Our hands are tied, Ma'am Ophel, with the Supreme Court case kasi, Ma'am Ophel.
Parang kuan lang yun because sometimes the Supreme Court decision can be pwede namang ma-attack kundi kuan niya, 'di ba, nang sabi ang ang law nga ito ang legislature na. So once nga nandoon na mayroon na kayong parabang a stand for Region 7.
Ganyan kagaling po RD si Mrs. Oliva na hinahanapan talaga ng points of navigation miski yung Supreme Court decision na talaga RD.
Do not surrender, do not give up. There is no giving up.
We'll take note of the proposition of Ma'am Oliva. So we'll try discussing it among ourselves if we can do that.
we'd like to give you points of navigation lang to the point of exaggeration yung sabi ni Mrs. Oliva nga just to motivate you to make this collection. Sabi ni Mrs. Oliva, yung lupa na yan in connection with the franchise pa rin yan din ba? Ginagamit ba yan sa transmission yung lupa? Ginagamit ba yan sa actually directly exclusively? So sabi ni Mrs. Oliva, lifeblood doctrine pa rin po tayo. Tulad ng example ni Sir Jimmy, ginagawang tambakan lang, lupa ng NGCP, in connection with franchise pa rin yun. Yes.
Torrance, may question pa dito, Torrance. Isa, Torrance.
Yeah. Go ahead.
From Sir Jeff Bahaw, Torrance, sabi niya, if there are multiple
before you proceed, Sid,
yes.
Sir Jeff Bahaw is the City Assessor of Karkar. One of the admirer of your legs, Ma'am Ophel, si Sir Jeff Bahaw.
Sige,
Nasa chat box yan, documented yan. He admires your legs, Ma'am Ophel. Okay, go ahead, Sid.
Thank you.
Okay. Sabi ni Sir Jeff Bahaw kanina, because you have beautiful legs daw, Ma'am Ophel. Oh. Kaya you can cross it anytime you want. So, ito po yung question ni Sir Jeff. If there are multiple claimants to a single property covered by a single tax deck, is it possible to accept payment individually by all claimants if they insist to pay? Di ba we can only have a single payment to a specific?
Parang ganito.
When it comes to payment, accept kung ang lahat magbayad. You know why? Because pag isa lang ang gagamitin mo, para bang, if especially kasi marami ang magbayad dito, meaning there will be an impending pending litigation.
Parang gagamitin.
Litigation. Baka gagamitin ito. Pag siya lang ang tatanggapin mo, para kang nag-take side sa ganitong. So, you must be fair.
Ibang usapan yun.
So, ang gagawin mo is paid by ganito. Kung 5 ang magbayad, tanggapin mo ang 5. Anyway, pag ma-resolve na sa court, especially the ownership, i-refund na lang ang 4. Yung nagbayad, yun ang nanalo. So, ganito, i-refund or i-apply as tax credit for their other real property tax liabilities.
What about yung sinasabi ng Supreme Court dito sa NGCP, ma'am, na hindi dapat mag-refund si treasurer, doon maningil siya kung sino mong dapat yung magbabayad?
In this case, iba yun. Iba itong situation.
Yeah.
Because ang lahat, parang bakit magulo, ha? Bakit ang lahat gustong magbayad? Meaning, ang lahat nag-claim nga, I am the owner. So therefore, one who claims, gusto niya magbayad. So, tanggapin kong lahat. At least may pera naman tayo.
Yan, ibang usapan yun, ma'am, di ba?
Never refuse any payment of taxes. Even if it is illegal, accept. Anyway,
accept pa rin.
Accept. Hindi naman napunta sa bulsa mo yung illegal na yan. Andun sa kuan.
On that note, ma'am, in this instance sa NGCP case, ma'am, nagbayad si NGCP doon sa obligation ni NPC, ni National Power. Is that an erroneous collection, ma'am? Erroneous o illegal? Erroneous or illegal?
It is not erroneous. It is not also illegal.
Hindi siya pasok doon sa claim for refund. Kasi yun lang yung basis ng claim for refund at tax credit. Erroneous at illegal.
Hindi, because pag ayaw magbayad ng NPC, I will auction the property.
Okay.
So they will fail to use the properties, the machineries. They will fail to use it for transmission and kuan. At saka, under the Real Property Tax Code on auction and the remedy of administrative and judicial, hindi exempted yung ang ganitong ang nagbayad o ganito. So, pag gano'n na is, yun ang gagawin ng...
I-reiterate ko lang yung point na kasi yung liability dito po sana for a certain time frame kay NPC, yung before the local government code, effectivity of... Si NPC yung dapat magbayad, bakit siningil nga natin si NGCP, ma'am? Miski si NPC yung nasa tax declaration, nasa assessment roll, siningil natin si NGCP kasi lumapit sa'yo for application of business. Tama po ba yun, ma'am?
No, iba yung kuana. Is when I tried to verify from the records of the case doon sa Cebu City, nagpadala ko ng demand letters, the first and second demand letters.
Kanino, ma'am? Kay NGCP or kay NPC?
No, NPC.
Yan.
Delivered to doon in 2009 nag-operate ang NGCP. It was delivered to Nasipi, Talamban, part of Cebu City, sa kanilang warehouses. So pagkatanggap nila, medyo takot sila. Kay what if talagang i-auction ko yan?
So may delinquency si NPC, ma'am.
May
Tapos
delinquency.
magti-take over si NGCP as
Oo.
concessionaire,
Yes.
wala kang maibang mapuntahan, sisingilin mo rin si NGCP.
NGCP.
Ganon po yan, ma'am.
Oo. Kasi
You cannot grant a permit din sa kanilang operation.
Oh. Siya man ang may interest sa property.
Yeah.
So, I try to take
Yeah.
home the opportunity nga
Yeah.
ito, magbayad na ito.
Yeah.
Magbayad talaga.
Yeah.
But paid under protest.
Before I go back to seat, ma'am, I would like to entertain question from as far as Sikihor. So, kirin natin sa kapihan si Ma'am Orlina. Ma'am, do you have NGCP in Sikihor, ma'am? Sa San Juan, ma'am? Ayan, San Juan, Sikihor.
Wala
Yes,
po,
ma'am.
sir.
Good for you.
Wala
Good
po
for you.
kami niyan. Sa Sikihor at saka sa Lasi po meron.
Okay. Do you have any other question nonetheless, ma'am, for Ma'am Ophel?
Wala na po. Wala
Ayan
na po, attorney.
Ayan, wala. Thank you po, ma'am. Sige. Bigyan ng jacket yan.
Hi, thank you.
Wala. Sid, baka may question ka pa dyan, Sid?
Ano lang, Torns, reminder lang dun sa evaluation form,
Yeah.
Torns. And also, may we request everyone to turn on their cameras for photo op,
Yes,
siguro?
please.
Yes.
Yes, please. And at this juncture, while you're turning off your cameras, we'd like to give this floor to Mrs. Oliva before we go to our regional director para gratitude message natin sa ating speaker. Ma'am Ofelia, any motivational speech or closing message para sa atin pong discussion ito? I'm sure we are very grateful for your time. Libre po ito. Alam po natin na mamaos na po si Mrs. Oliva. Iba po kasi yung mag-lecture pag face-to-face. Ang daming adlib niya na joke dito po kasi diretso yung discussion niya, medyo na mamaos. Ma'am Ophel, you have the floor for your motivational speech, Ma'am Ophel.
Okay, to all my treasurers, my friends and fellow treasurers 5 years ago, please do your duty as treasurers. You are the breadwinner of the LGU. Nakadepend ang lahat dito on the treasurer. At saka, itong assessor naman, dapat tulungan ninyo ang treasurer. Na makakulay kayo ng mga taxes para maka-inject kayo ng progress to the LGU. Because it is only through taxes na makapakatulong kayo sa mga LGUs. So do your share very well. And don't be afraid na along the way, na merong mga kaso kayo or ano. Basta hindi lang kayo ang nagnakaw, hindi lang kayo ang may kasalanan, it is always in your official capacity as treasurer of the city, municipality, or province na hindi ka naman ikukulong kung matalo ka sa case. Hindi ka naman bibigyan ng pera kung manalo ka. Pero at least, ang akin lang is, at least nandun, I did this for the benefit of Cebu City government. I tried my best to make some research. Only when it was implemented, I was no longer there. I was transferred to Toledo City. So at least, bahalan kayo, as I've said, kung mayroon kayong problema in especially taxation problems, feel free to call me. I will be at your doorstep. Available ang services ko 24/7, my dears. This is how I love the treasurers and assessors.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ofelia M. Oliva, please, ang atin pong resource speaker ngayon. On behalf of the Bureau and the Association of Local Treasurers of Region 7, we'd like to hear from a word of gratitude from our Regional Director. Ardi, ang galing-galing po ng ating speaker, Ardi. Yes, go ahead, Ardi.
Yes, Torres. All right. So, in behalf of the LGF7, and of course the Alta family, we would like to thank our gorgeous speaker, the person of Ma'am Ophel Oliva. So as our gratitude, so wala po tayong pang lubag-loob kay Ma'am Oliva, only the certificate. Jules, can you show to the screen our certificate of appreciation? As our way of thanking Ma'am Oliva for her time, for sharing her guidance and information to our local treasurers. So I understand that the guidance and information that our participants have gained from this webinar will be a heads up. Okay, will be a heads up for our treasurers and assessor for perhaps a potential problem in the future okay, and possible complaints. So by the time na meron na kayong you will be experiencing all of those scenarios, you are now ready because na-anticipate na natin through the navigation shared by Ma'am Oliva. So, Jules, meron ka ng ano?
Standby po kayo sa ating photo op mamaya ha. Huwag muna bibitaw. Alam namin uwian na ngayon pero standby po muna.
Jules, yung screen for the certificate that we're about to give for Ma'am Oliva.
Ayan, nag-error daw po yung PDF niya, RD. We can show that on screen daw, RD. Okay. Go ahead, RD.
Okay. So again, Ma'am Oliva, thank you for your precious time given to the BLGF7 as well as to our participants, not only in Central Visayas, but we have participants as far as Region 2, Region 3, Region 5, and Region 7, Region 6, and Region 9, and Region 10. Meron Region 12. So we thank you for your dedication. Still, you still have a heart for the treasury services. You still naka-imbibe pa rin sa iyo yung ano nito, yung mga treasures nasa puso mo pa rin. So, thank you so much and we look forward for another engagement with you. Okay? Pero sana we can have a little tawag nito gratuity for your
Okay. Yes.
for the makeup of Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Talaga nakakahiya, Ma'am Ophel. Thank you talaga. Anybody of you would like to extend appreciation kay Ma'am Ophel, you can do so in the chat box. Okay. Sid, take it away for the photo opportunity, Sid.
Okay, I would like to request everyone to please open their cameras for a quick photo op.
Okay, stand by. 1, 2, 3. Another slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So let me borrow Torrance this quote that I got from Ma'am Oliva earlier. So, with a new day after the seminar comes new strength and new thoughts and also new collection strategies. Thank you so much, Ma'am Ophel, and thank you everyone for attending this webinar. Have a great week ahead.
In behalf of our BLGF management, we are so immensely grateful to our resource speaker, no less than Mrs. Ofelia Oliva, for sharing to us her valuable and precious time. Thank you so much, Ma'am Ophel, for the encouragement to our treasurers and assessors to have courage to succeed and of course to allow others to succeed as well. So all this experimentation and innovation is bound and should happen within the guardrails consistent with the Bureau's mandate and objectives. So thank you also to our online Kapihan production team, Attorney Tanyeka, Julie Spanoy, June Abelia, Jed, Sid, Caballero, Sara, and all the BLGF personnel for truly have a heart for our local treasurers and assessors. Again, thank you to our participants, to our regular viewers for always sharing their time every Monday morning. Thank you so much. And again, don't forget to like, to share, and of course to subscribe our YouTube channel. Good morning and God bless everyone.